Steel Notes Magazine is your source for what's happening on the local, national, and international scene with news, reviews, and interviews. Get more notes per measure at Steel Notes Magazine.
You're listening to Music 101 with your host, Alexxis Steele. Sponsored by Steel Notes Magazine. You can find them at the web, folks, at www.steelnotesmagazine.com.
Hi, it's Alexxis Steele with Music 101. It gives me great pleasure this evening to bring to you the most famous musician you've never heard of, Andy Cahan. How you doing, Andy?
I'm terrific. I'm so very grateful to be on your show. I've heard a lot of wonderful things about it. I was on iHeartRadio with another interviewee. I can't remember his name, but yeah, I've done about 30 different podcasts. But your show is, I've heard so many wonderful things about it.
Thank you.
And,
appreciate that.
And I'm grateful to be on it. This is great.
Okay, thanks. Well, Andy, so you are originally an East Coaster, born in Brooklyn, New York, right?
Yep, I was born in Brooklyn and raised in New Rochelle, New York. At 3 years old, my parents moved from Brooklyn to New Rochelle.
How long did you live in New Rochelle?
Till 1968. And then I moved to Los Angeles in 1968.
Okay. We're going to get a little bit of background on you for our listeners that might not be aware. So I thought some interesting things that I wanted to ask you about. So as a child, you made horror films using an 8mm movie camera and a tape recorder. Tell me about that. What were the movies that you made and who were your horror influences and favorites?
Well, you know, I loved Frankenstein. I loved Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. I loved The Bride of Frankenstein. I loved The Wolfman, all these scary movies. So my father had an 8mm camera, and it allowed me to do still, you can click one frame at a time. So I made a movie called The Mad Magician, where the room spins around in a circle.
Wow.
So I would take the camera, go click, 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 until it was around. And I had a monster hand, and I put it on the ground, and then I would take a still frame and then move the monster hand on the ground. And then after that, I got a really cool camera that allowed me to do a lap dissolve inside the camera. So I would shoot a scene, fade out, and then I push a button and rewind the film the same amount of time as the fade out. Then I would shoot the next scene and fade in. So in the camera, I would do a lap dissolve where one scene fades. And I was 14, 15 years old, and I made Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, Revenge from Planet 4, The Smugglers, a pie fight movie, and The Mad Magician. And they were all sound and color. And I used the Kodak Sound 8 projector, which just came out.
Anything with them? Did you ever do anything with those movies?
Well, I was a kid. I didn't know nothing from nothing, but I uploaded all of them on YouTube.
Oh,
you can see it all on YouTube.
I'll check them out.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So, so your influences and favorites, what you liked, The Wolfman of Frankenstein?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
How about, did you like Bela Lugosi?
I loved the first Dracula with Bela Lugosi. Loved it. But my favorite Frankenstein movie was The Bride of Frankenstein, when Boris Karloff started to talk. The monster talked.
Right.
And, he would go, wine. Oh, good. It was just
right.
one of my favorite movies. Definitely a favorite.
Very cool. Okay, so tell me, How old were you when you first started getting involved with music and wanting to play instruments?
I was 10 years old, and my cousin gave me a drum set. So I had the drum set in the basement, and I would play drums all day and have fun. And then my father sat down at the piano, and he wasn't an accomplished musician, but he gave me one piano lesson, and he's just said, do whatever I do. So he plays a triad, and he goes bum 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 bum, and so I played the same triad, and I
Mhm.
copied him. Then with his other hand, he played a melody. Bum 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 bum. That's the Snake Charmers song.
Yeah, yeah.
So in one lesson, I did the bum 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 bum. I played both hands just like he
Wow.
taught me. Then he said, okay, now we're going to switch. No, with the left hand, you're going to do the bombs, and with the right hand, you're going to do the melody. So in one piano lesson, I learned how to play rhythm and lead with both hands.
Wow, that's wild. That's
And
great.
I was 10 years old. And then, of course, my life completely changed on February 9th, 1964, when the Beatles came out on Ed Sullivan.
Hmm.
Just like every other musician I know,
Right. Beatles were their inspiration.
that was it. It was total amazing, total amazing. In fact, I was so excited. I went to the pharmacy and I bought a product called Permastraight. It's supposed to straighten your curly hair.
What was it
So
called?
Permastraight. It was a hair product because
Hmm,
my hair
okay,
was
so I heard curl free because when I was a kid, my hair was real wavy and I wanted
yeah.
straight hair because in the 60s we all wanted straight hair, what I mean?
I
In
know.
the 70s.
Look, so I had curly hair and I used the product. It was called Perma Straight. This is 1964. And so I put it on and it worked for an hour. And then after that, it all curled up again. So, but the Beatles were the reason, and they are the reason that I'm a professional musician.
Okay. So you started out, like you said, playing piano, or playing drums, you play guitar, and you said you also play bass. Now, are you all self-taught on all those instruments?
Yes, I can't read music. I everything's by
Okay.
ear.
That's
So
good. Yeah, me too.
I can I can hear a song and tell you what key it's in and what the notes are and
Wow.
all that stuff. So it's pretty amazing. So
Okay.
yeah, so I was extremely influenced by Ringo Starr. I would play the Beatles album, Meet the Beatles, and I would play the drums along with Ringo, and I learned how to play the drums listening to Ringo Starr. And then, of course, the Lennon McCartney chord progressions and their melodies totally influenced me. And I wrote incredible, complicated songs back when I was 16, 15 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were only 15 when you got involved with being in the Turtles with Mark
Uh,
Volman and Fluorescent Leachonetti.
yeah, that happened in 1973. I
Okay, so
think
you
I
were
was
past that.
23 years old, 22 or
Oh, okay.
23. They were all born in 1947. Flo and Eddie, Mark Volman and Howard Kalin, the lead corporation owners of the Turtles. We were all born in 1947, so we're all the same age.
Well, I actually met Mark Volman. I sent you a picture of him and I. I was 15 years old. I was at the Alice Cooper Group's Billion Dollar Babies after party at the Showboat at Penn's Landing in Philadelphia. So there's a
That's
picture of me
wonderful.
and Mark Volman.
Yeah, he's great. I love those guys with all my heart. They're the funniest, talented. They've been asked to sing on everybody's hit record.
Mhm.
Bruce Springsteen.
Really?
Everybody's got Hungry Heart. That's all Flo and
I didn't
Eddie.
know that.
Oh, and Duran Duran and Todd Rundgren and Blondie and T-Rex. Bang a gong, get it
Oh,
on.
thanks. Wow.
That's all Flo and Eddie singing. Bang a gong, get it on.
Mhm.
All the high stuff. So they are just giants in the music industry. Everybody knows who they are.
Wow. Oh, it's funny because I just actually recently. I interviewed his son. You know,
Whose son?
the from T-Rex.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they're really good friends
Mark
with
Bowen's
Flo
son,
and Eddie.
Roland Bowen.
Yeah, he was very, very close with Flo and Eddie. Very close.
Very cool. Very cool. So,
Yeah.
this was interesting because, when I had my first bands when I was young, because I grew up in the music industry, and a band that I had when I was younger, my friend played something that you were known for, which is the Farfisa compact organ. And
That was,
later recognized as Johnny Farfisa, right?
yeah, what happened was I saw the Dave Clark Five on TV. And I said, wow, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Mike Smith standing at the organ with his legs spread out like, and he looks so cool. So I bought the Farfisa organ. And of course, everybody used it. 96 Tears and Come On Down to My Boat Baby and Paul
Mhm.
Revere and the Raiders and tons and tons. Even Elton John used it on Crocodile Rock.
Really? Oh, wow.
But whatever, I loved the Hammond B3 organ.
Mm,
Uh, Felix Cavalieri was my neighbor, and we grew up together, and uh, we both fell madly in love with the Hammond B3. So I took my Farfisa organ to Manny's Music in New York City, and I had them connect it to a Leslie speaker, the Hammond Leslie
right. Yeah.
rotating.
Mhm.
So it was way ahead of its time. I was the only guy who played a Farfisa through a Leslie speaker. It was
Wow.
very, very cool, very cool. And my band at that time, we won every single battle of the bands in Westchester County, New York. We won all of them. We were very tight. We wore, suits with the turtleneck, and
Right. Mhm.
my mom made the jackets. She was a
Oh,
seamstress. So
nice.
she made our uniforms. It was very cool. 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. I was playing music all the time and rehearsing every day after school. We'd go to my basement and rehearse.
So you had a lot of support, even though like your parents really weren't involved. You had a lot of support from your parents.
Oh, they totally supported me in every possible way. That's what really helped me along, really did.
Very good. So now by the time you turned around 20, you moved from New York to LA at that time, correct?
Yes, my mom's best friend was Irwin Garr, and he used to work at ABC Dunhill with the Mamas and the Papas.
Mm,
Then he opened up his own record label called Pulsar Records, and on that label was Dr. John the Night Tripper, Mac Rabenak, and Graham Bond, who was a blues organ player, saxophone player from England who had a band called the Graham Bond Organization
mm,
with Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce from
mm.
the Cream. This is before they met Eric Clapton and formed the Cream.
Right.
So Graham was out here in Los Angeles, and I was the gopher. Irwin Garr hired me as a gopher. Do the Xerox,
Right.
take
Mhm.
take the photos of the recording sessions, pick up the musicians, take them to the recording sessions. Go get coffee. Do all that stuff.
Right.
So, very 2 weeks after I moved to LA, Graham Bond calls me and says, we got a jam session at a recording studio. Why don't you come on down and pick us up and let's have some fun? And at that time, I had an electric harpsichord, the
Mm,
Baldwin electric harpsichord, and I still have my Leslie speaker. So I ran the harpsichord through the Leslie, and it
mm,
was the most amazing sound. So
I bet.
I get I get in my VW bus and I go pick up Graham Bond and his wife Diane, and we go to a studio called TTG Studios in Hollywood, and Mitch Mitchell was on the drums, setting up his drums, and Lowell George from Little Feat, he was playing the flute,
Mm,
and Jack Cassidy from the Jefferson Airplane was on the bass,
nice.
and Graham Bond was on the Hammond B3 organ, and I was setting up my harpsichord, and then
Yeah.
I felt something. It was a weird. I felt it, and it gave me goosebumps. And I turned around, and walks Jimi Hendrix with two blonde chicks.
Oh,
One,
wow.
one holding his amp, and the other one holding his guitar. And he walks in the room, and he sets up right next to me, so I can touch him. He's that close,
Wow.
and we played the blues in A for 2 hours.
Mm,
It was the one of the most amazing times of my life. I was complete goosebumps being in the studio with all these icons.
yeah.
I was 20 years old. It was totally amazing.
So you wound up making a name for yourself as a keyboard player and arranger, right? For Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Harry Nilsson, Flo and Eddie, and others, right?
Ringo Starr and Eric Carmen, who just passed away. I recorded 12 songs with Eric in my living room that he wrote Raspberries, before the
Mm,
Raspberries. And I recorded 35 songs with Harry Nilsson in my living room. And I did an album with Howard Kalin, the lead singer of the Turtles, called Dust Bunnies,
mm.
which we ended up finishing at Billy Bob Thornton's home in Beverly Hills.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, just amazing stories. Uh, they're all in my book.
Okay. So I was going to say, what was it like working with those greats, the forefathers of rock and roll?
Oh man, I worked with Little Richard for a year and a half, and one day I got a phone call. We're doing the Grammys. So I go to the Grammys, we all dressed up in a tuxedo,
Mhm.
and it was Little Richard and Chuck Berry were doing the awards for Best Song of the Year. And so the rehearsal was in a little tiny room backstage. It had an upright piano, and they asked me to be the music director for that segment.
Nice.
So it was Little Richard and Chuck Berry and me, just the three of us in the room, going over their hit songs that were going to be used for the presentation of the Grammy.
Mm,
And yeah, like instead of Tutti Frutti, Rudy, they
right.
changed the names, they changed the lyrics. So it was like Al Green, he's clean. So
No.
they Berry and Little Richard changed the lyrics
Nice.
to the nominee's name,
To the nominee. Yeah, very cool.
So that was one of the most amazing times of my life, because John Lennon and Paul McCartney idolized Chuck Berry and Little Richard. And it
Hmm.
was like a full circle. Here I am with the Beatles idols on the Grammys working with Chuck and Richard, just the three of us in a room. I
Wow.
mean, to me,
Must have
that
been
was,
amazing.
oh my God. I got videos on YouTube of that. Really
I
cool
can see
stuff.
that too. And you also did something too for American Bandstand, right? Showcasing
I
Little
was
Richard and Chuck Berry.
just Little Richard. We did a Little Richard segment. It was the 20th anniversary of American Bandstand.
Okay.
And I was the music director for that too. And well, what was really great, we did Good Golly Miss Molly, and then we did Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones.
Oh.
It was really incredible to hear Little Richard go, I can't get no,
Oh yeah, yeah, right.
oh my God, it was so rocking. It was, Little Richard loved that band that I was in with him for those 3 years. We had Craig Cramph on drums. He was a drummer with me with the two Flo and Eddie albums we did on Columbia. He also was a drummer on Betty Davis Eyes
Oh, really?
and on Hot Child in the City.
Nice.
Nick Gilder, and he won a Grammy with what's her name who sang Betty Davis? Kim Carnes.
Kim Carnes, yeah.
Won a Grammy with her on the Flashdance album. They wrote a ballad together, so he won a Grammy for that. And he's one of the best drummers ever. Solid, terrific, great drummer.
Yeah, I found something else which was really cool. That you worked on a cartoon soundtrack with Ray Bolger, who played the Scarecrow on The Wizard of Oz.
That was incredible. Flo and Eddie were hired by Kids Stuff Records to do the music for Strawberry Shortcake, G.I. Joe, and the Care Bears. So that's me on the Casio keyboard playing all the music for these cartoons.
Oh, wow.
Then one day, an agency called them up and said, we want you to do the music for a cartoon called Peter and the Magic Egg. And it's all about the Easter Bunny. And the lead character was Ray Bolger. He played the voice of the bunny.
Oh, wow.
So we had to rehearse the song with Ray at his house in Beverly Hills.
Wow.
So we go over to his house. He was like 84 years old. And he invites us back to his garage. And there was an upright piano. And so I sit at the piano. And then Ray Bolger sits right next to me at the piano. And I was going, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because The Wizard of Oz still is my favorite movie of all time.
That's same with me. That's my all-time favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz.
So we did the rehearsal. We did the song. It's up on YouTube. I actually posted that as well.
Okay, yeah, I want to see that too. Yeah.
And then at the end of the session, Ray Bolger looks at me and he goes, "You want to know what it was like to be in The Wizard of Oz?" Like the Scarecrow. And so I said, yeah. And so he told me that everything was live. There was no overdubs. The orchestra was there. They sang live. All the vocals, nothing over. Everything was live. And the funniest thing was that the Munchkins hated Dorothy.
Really?
In fact, all the crew and the people on the set made fun of the Munchkins because they were midgets. And they, unfortunately, in 1937, everybody made fun of them. So Dorothy, Judy Garland made fun of them as well. So what they did in return was they got a brown paper bag and they put dog poop in the brown paper bag. And they wound it up and they went over to Dorothy's trailer where she has her dressing room.
Yeah.
And they lit the paper bag on fire.
Wow.
And then they knocked on her dressing room door and ran away. So she comes to the door, opens up the door, and sees this bag on fire. And so she steps on the bag.
Oh, my God.
The dog poop. So that's the way the Munchkins got back at Dorothy. And this is Ray Bolger telling me this. So that's another amazing moment in my
Oh
life.
yeah,
Amazing.
I can imagine. Now tell
Yeah.
me, excuse me, about a band. We're gonna have to pause for a second, okay? I have to. Sorry, I'm getting over with this sickness, you know.
Ouch.
This will get edited out. Steve's gonna edit it out. Okay. So tell me, Andy, about one of the bands that you had, a Geronimo Black with members of Frank Zappa's Mothers of Invention group.
Yes. I had a very good representative at the Musicians Union in Hollywood. His name was Frank Sorkin, and everybody called him Scooby. And he actually got me hooked up with the Turtles. He got me hooked up with Seals and Crofts. And then Jimmy Carl Black, the Indian of the group with Frank Zappa,
Mhm.
from all the original Mothers of Invention albums, he was starting his own band called Geronimo Black, which was named after his youngest son, Geronimo.
Mm.
So he came over to my house with Roy Estrada, the bass player from the original Mothers, and I played him my original music, and he loved it. So we started a band called Geronimo Black with Roy Estrada, Ray Collins, the original singer with Frank, who did Help I'm a Rock and all that,
Mhm.
and Bunk Gardner, the saxophone player. So we started a band, and we did a whole bunch of gigs, and finally, uh, Frank Zappa said he called up Jimmy. He says, "I'm doing a movie called 200 Motels, and I want you to
Mm.
be in it."
Nice.
So Jimmy and I got in my VW bus, and we drove down to the rehearsal, and there was Flo and Eddie, singing, you know, lead. They were the lead of the movie, and Jimmy Carl Black did a song called "Lonesome Cowboy Bert," and
Mm.
Flo and Eddie were the background vocals on that. So at that rehearsal, I got to meet Flo and Eddie, which eventually got me into the Turtles.
Right.
Uh, uh, the Jimmy and I did an album for Uni Records called Geronimo Black, and it really didn't sell. We signed at the end of the year. Our management got $50,000, and each member of the band got $1,200.
Wow.
So it was fun, but we didn't get paid.
Right. And so then how long were you with in the Turtles?
I joined the Turtles in 1973. Uh, I went to Cherokee Recording Studios in the San Fernando Valley to do overdubs on the Hammond B3 organ on Richard Nader's movie called Let the Good Times Roll. And that's when I was playing with Little Richard, and they wanted me to overdub some of the organ parts, so it was balanced in the mix.
Right.
So in the studio at the same time, Flo and Eddie were doing a cartoon, an X-rated cartoon
Oh wow.
called Dirty Duck, and
I
it
think
was
I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, so it was on Merricombe Swenson Wolf, the cartoon company that did Valley of the Jolly Ho Ho Ho, Green Giant. They did a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how I joined the Turtles. They asked me to play keyboards with them because Bruce Robb, who was an engineer at Cherokee, he played the keyboard parts on their cartoon, but they asked him to go on the road, and he says, "I can't because I'm working in the studio."
Mhm.
So Mark Volman says, "Hey, Andy, you want to go on the road?" I said, "Sure." So for 40 years, I was in the Turtles on the road,
Wow.
and recorded a whole bunch of albums, and I met every single uh, music celebrity that you can ever wish to meet. because of Flo and Eddie,
Right. Well, so
because everybody.
also in 2019, you took over the lead vocals in place of Mark Volman for the Happy Together tour, and also on the soundtrack, I guess a live track as well.
Well, Howard Kalin was unable to tour. He's the lead singer for the Turtles.
Hmm.
So he had a stroke and he couldn't go on the road.
Hmm.
So Mark Volman got Ron Dante from the Archies, Sugar, Sugar,
Yeah.
ba-bum. So Ron Dante became the new lead singer of the Turtles. But
Mhm.
they have a live CD they were selling at all the concerts. And Mark and Ron said, why don't we get Howard to sing Happy Together on the track that they recorded on stage?
Mhm.
So Ron Dante sent me the Pro Tools file and just of the band. And then Howard Kalin came over to my living room here in the desert, and one take sang Happy Together.
Wow,
And
that's good.
that was the definitive version. The very last time that he recorded Happy Together was in my living room.
Mm.
We spent most of the time smoking joints and laughing. And then he says, you want to do it? I said, okay, let's do it. Put on the headphones, and he sang it one take, done. And Joe Wizard, the producer of the original Happy Together, also said Howard Kalin sang it one take. That was it, the rehearsal take. And that was the master lead vocal. So how is the weather?
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
we're familiar
that
with the
was that
song.
was the first take. So and I love Howard Kalin. To me, he's one of the best vocalists ever. He's equal to Little Richard and Paul McCartney and John Lennon, and I mean he's an incredible vocalist.
Mhm.
And Mark Volman is a great vocalist too. So Flo and Eddie, like I said, did backgrounds on a lot of hit records.
Let's go back on some of like your own music now.
Yes,
Um, you have things that you sent me on the Mooch, a Hell of a Day, and hold on, pause again.
Chikang Kong.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that over again. So let's go to some of the music that you have personally. You sent me the Mooch, Hell of a Day, and Chi Kang. Was it Chi Kang Kong?
Yes,
Now that was
yes.
with that was the song with Ezra Mohawk, wasn't it?
That's what Ezra. Well,
Hmm.
when I first started the band with Jimmy Carl Black, Geronimo Black, Ezra was hanging out with us because she was the only girl at that time to be with Frank Zappa.
Right.
Uh, Frank Zappa named her Uncle Meat.
Me. Yep. Yeah.
So I fell madly in love with her from her primordial album.
Lovers, Primordial Lovers. Yeah,
I
Ezra was a good friend of mine.
uh, there's one song on there. I wish I could remember the title. It's in E flat, but it gave me goosebumps, and I fell madly in love with her. And we dated, and she came over to my place, and I said I always wanted to write songs with a girl, and all
Hmm.
this stuff. So I wrote this song called Chikang Kong, and the reason that it has a title like that is when I played with Dr. John the Night Tripper, Mac Rabenak, he
Hmm.
would use all these syllables and names like Snake Ala Gree Gree Kalimbo Kalimbo, and he'd make rhythmical words up.
Hmm.
So I wrote this song called Chikang Kong as a rhythm. And I asked Ezra, would you sing harmonies with me? I'm going to go in the studio and record it. So
Hmm.
she said, sure. So amazingly, she recorded her vocals all one take.
Wow.
Everything was one take. And It was absolutely amazing. The drummer is a world famous drummer. His name is Maury Baker, and he played with Janis Joplin and recorded with her. Tim Buckley, Judy Collins,
Hmm.
uh, what's his name? Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones. Uh, yeah, incredible drummer. So he played the Tiffany drums. Instead of having tom toms on his drum kit, he'd have the Tiffany. So it was really a wonderful, wonderful recording. And the bass player who played with me with Geronimo Black, Tom Levy, a great, great blues bass player. Uh, he was the bass. So it was just Ezra, Maury, Tom, and me. And we made this Chikang Kong record. Really great.
Very nice. Okay, so then what about the Mooch?
The Mooch, I almost got a record deal with the Mooch. Um, I wrote this song, very simple, like straight ahead forward chords with a descending line. And I wrote the lyrics. Does your wife have any cigarettes around? Because if she does, I'd smoke them to the ground. I don't have a car and I need a place to stay.
Mhm.
Maybe a smoke on hand to blow my world away. And I met this incredible vocalist by the name of Bill Oz at this studio called Haji. It was located at the crossroads of the world in Hollywood. And I met Steve Perry the same time.
Get out.
So I had a choice. I could use Steve Perry to sing the Mooch, or I can use Bill Oz to sing the Mooch. And I chose Bill Oz. He had a really great voice, totally different than Steve Perry. Steve
Mhm.
Perry is silky,
Yeah.
like Steve Perry's favorite song of all songs was Sam Cooke's "You Send Me." Whoa, whoa, whoa! He would always love that song. But
Yeah.
Bill Oz had a real strong, killer rock and roll voice. So we recorded the Mooch. I played it for 20th Century Fox Records, and they gave me $3,000 in 1974
Sorry, can you
to.
pause there a second? I have to do something. Sorry about that. I had it. There was background stuff going on, so I had to take care of that. Okay, I'm sorry. Now where we left off, we were talking about the Mooch. If you wanna, do you want to start over with that whole sentence?
Yes, I met Steve Perry and Bill Oz, two great singers, in a studio called Haji, which was located at the crossroads of the world in Hollywood. And I had a choice, either Steve or Bill Oz, to sing the song I wrote called The Mooch. And I chose Bill Oz because he had a really strong rock and roll voice. And Steve Perry's voice was silky smooth like Sam Cooke.
Mhm.
And he loved You Send Me by Sam Cooke. That was Steve Perry's favorite song.
Wow.
Anyway, so we recorded the Mooch. I got 20th Century Fox Records interested in the song because it was killer. The recording session was amazing. And so they gave me $3,000 to put on a showcase to try to get a record deal. So my lead singer, Bill Oz, he took the demo that we made on the Mooch and went to New York City and got himself a record deal on that demo.
Oh
So
wow.
I was stuck. I didn't have the same lead singer from the record. So I had this guy, Michael Condello, a really nice guy, really good singer, but he didn't come close to Bill Oz's vocals, and we did the showcase, but it didn't sound like the record, so I never got signed. So
Oh,
that's the story about the Mooch. But when you listen to the song, it's like it sounds like a hit. It totally sounds like a hit record.
yeah, that's a shame, you know?
I know.
Yeah. Okay, so then what about Hell of a Day?
Hell of a Day is a really wonderful, wonderful song. I love that song. Uh, I wrote it in 1983. Oh, wait, 1989. Wait, no, 1983 I wrote it. And I was friends with Mark Avnet and Dusty Wakeman and Michael Dumas. They had a recording studio in Venice, California called Mad Dog Studios. And Robbie Krieger from The Doors
Oh,
recorded there. And I produced all of the grandmothers, all the original members of Frank Zappa's Mothers of Mention. I
wow.
produced 2 albums in that studio. So anyway, Mark Avnet, one of the engineers and owners, had an incredible high voice, really, really good voice.
Hmm.
So I recorded the basic tracks at an analog ribbon microphone studio in Hollywood called the Annex. It was the same studio that Buddy Holly and Elvis Presley used. It was all ribbon microphones and tube amplifiers. So I did the basic tracks there. The drums had 3 mics, a kick drum mic that was like 2 yards away, and 2 overheads, and that was it. And it was a very, very live drum sound. And then I took that tape and went to Mad Dog Studios and had Mark Avnet sing the lead vocals, and Dusty and Mark did the background vocals. And the song came out really great. It's a really great song.
Nice.
So, yeah, those 3 are my 3 favorite songs that I wrote.
Okay, great. So now, in 2020, that's when your book came out.
Yes.
That's all your amazing stories with Jimi Hendrix, Beatles, Turtles, Frank Zappa, Harry Nilsson, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and I'm sure many, many more.
Yeah, it's a coffee table book. It weighs 2 pounds.
Mm.
It's called the
How many
most famous
pages? How many pages is it?
345.
Oh, wow.
And it's got never seen before photos of all these celebrity musicians that I worked with: Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Ringo Starr, Paul McCartney, Harry Nilsson, Jimmy Webb, Eric Carmen, Dr. John. You know, all these celebrities are all in the book with behind the scenes stories
Hmm.
that nobody's ever heard, you know. And it's just every page is a different celebrity. It's really a wonderful book. It's on Amazon, and I also sell it autographed, but it's doing very well. And it's called The Most Famous Musician You Never Heard of.
Hmm.
So I'm plugging my book.
That's right. That's fine. And also, you also are a man for hire too. I saw weddings, corporate gigs, whatever. You know what I mean? I guess will you go anywhere in the United States, or you'd stay in?
Oh yeah, yes. I do instrumental piano. I'm designed for the background music. So
Mhm.
when there's a private party, I'm just playing the piano. I don't stop. I play like 3 hours straight without
Wow.
stopping, and people love it. People love it. And I play, you know, the Beatles and the Stones and all the British Invasion
Mm.
and Everly Brothers and Floyd Kramer and, you know, really memorable, you know, Turtles,
Right,
you know,
right.
all the great songs instrumentally. And people love it. You know, the tip jar is always overflowing. And I have a lot of fun doing that. And I'm also working as a sideman for a group from Canada. Uh,
Oh,
they're called they're called the Dreamboats,
oh,
and they're the most amazing band I have seen in my life. They're my favorite band. They're all in their 30s, and they do vintage rock and roll, like Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, the Everly Brothers, Elvis. All the original Bill Haley and the Comets,
Nice.
Eddie Cochran, all the old 50s and 60s, and they put on a show. They don't just sing the songs.
Right.
They all wear the same suit, like they did in the 50s.
Right.
And they have their steps, with the synchronized
choreography, like choreography, dancing and stuff like that, right?
And the lead singer does handstands.
Really?
And he does break dancing, and he does, like there's a pole on the side of the stage holding the ceiling up. He would grab the pole sideways and stretch his body out horizontal. He's an athlete. These guys that's why they're called the Dreamboats. They're all really good looking young guys.
Wow.
And they all sing and play. The lead singer plays the drums. So they have a little skit where the lead singer gets on a second drum set. So they have two drummers, the bass and the guitar, and they do Wipeout,
Really?
Then they trade drum solos, and they get the audience to join in, Just really a fantastic, wonderful band. Really great. I love them.
Yeah. And so where is that performing anywhere right now?
Oh, yeah, they're in Arizona right now playing at, what's the name of that famous lake there? The lake in Arizona. Oh, my God, I can't remember. Anyhow, they're playing there. They just got out of New Jersey, New York, and they're coming to Palm Springs tomorrow. Wait, is it the 23rd? What is today?
Today's the 22nd.
Yeah, so I think they're going to be in town tomorrow. And then I'm playing some gigs with them, private parties. Mm-hmm. It's just a bunch of fun. It's all the music that I grew up with, that's the same stuff they're doing. So I'm in heaven. I love it.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so now where can fans and listeners find you, find your music and things like that?
It's very simple. If you Google the most famous musician you've never heard of, it'll automatically pop up. And all my podcasts I've done with 30 or 40 different podcasts. Mm-hmm. And then my book will pop up on Amazon, and all the videos of me on the Grammys with Little Richard, and me on American Bandstand, and on the Gary Shandling show. Remember that show?
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was on that with the Turtles, and that's up on YouTube. And
so you said if you type in the most famous musician that you've never heard of, these videos are on there?
Yeah, it automatically pops up. Yeah, there's like 50 or 60 different websites that have my videos and my podcasts and the book. It's all over the place.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on my show tonight, Andy.
You're listening to Music 101 with your host, Alexxis Steele. Sponsored by Steel Notes Magazine. You can find them at the web, folks, at www.steelnotesmagazine.com.